Call the meeting to order. Begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Otter, can I call the roll, please?
Mr. Norris?
Here.
Ms. Thies? Here. Mr. Morris?
Here.
Ms. Wager?
Here.
Ms. Wilson?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Here. Thank you, Mr. Otter. Next, had corrections to the journal of the preceding meetings. First up, the April 6, 2021 Sunshine Meeting. The information in your packet, please review those meeting minutes and note any changes or corrections that need to be made. If there are no changes or corrections to be made, I would accept a motion to accept the meeting minutes as presented.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Motion on the floor by Councilman Thompson, second by Councilman Norris. There's no comments or discussion. I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Ms. Thies?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Wager?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye. Motion carries. Next, we have the meeting minutes for the April 13th, 2021 meeting. Again, please review those minutes, starting on page 32. If there are any corrections that need to be made, please state those at this time. If there are no amendments or corrections to be made to the meeting minutes, I would entertain a motion to accept at this time.
So moved.
Second.
Motion on the floor by Councilman Thompson, second by Councilwoman Wilson. There's no questions or comments. I would ask for a roll call vote, please.
Aye.
Ms. Thies?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye, motion carries. Moving on, we have public comments. Public comment for the regularly scheduled council meetings is generally for items on the agenda not relating, speaking on items that are not on the agenda. However, tonight, there will be a slight deviation from that, as tonight is the public hearing for the abatement for Duke Energy Renewable Solar LLC, which is Resolution 2021-03. So at this time, I would accept any public comment regarding that tax abatement request or any other items not on the agenda. It appears there's no one here from the public to make comments, so we'll close public comment at this time. Moving on. Communications from elected officials, other officials, or agencies of the county. Is there anyone that would like to speak at this time? We have for us on page 5 of your booklets, receipt of annual report of redevelopment commission. As you can see, this document carries on to page 11 of your booklet. We were sent this information last week. Does anyone have any questions or comments about that? The only thing required is that we acknowledge receipt of this document, this annual report from the Redevelopment Commission. If there are no questions or comments about the document, I will move on. Having none. Moving on, reports from committees. There are none. Ordinances relating to appropriations. First, we have the final reading of abatement for Duke Energy Renewable Solar LLC, Resolution 2021-03, Personal Property Tax Abatement, Duke Energy Renewable Solar LLC. In the booklet, we have some information that begins on page 12, which is the final action regarding resolution number 2021-03, personal property. You also have some additional documents. I believe everyone should have a statement of benefits, utility distributable property. It was given tonight. It is Form SB1. Then also, you were given previously worksheet information with some different scenarios prepared by Calissa Miller, the lead sheet of which has potential tax abatement options of a 10-year summary and different abatement schedules and what those would look like. And then you should also have a document that was just handed out to you just prior to the meeting starting. That document is regarding some information sent to me today from Tyler Kuhn with Duke Energy Sustainable Solutions regarding this abatement. And what you'll see on the lead page is a 10-year property tax abatement schedule. And it gives the tax abatement percentage, taxes abated, taxes paid during that time with the totals at the bottom. The next page, which would be the second page and final page, is a 7-year property tax abatement schedule which has been modified. You see a modified schedule. It is slightly, I wouldn't say slightly, it is different than the worksheet material provided to you by Council Administrator Calissa Miller. The schedule is slightly different in the way in which it decreases year over year. I would offer this time to open up discussion about any and all the material. There are representatives here from Duke Energy that would be happy to discuss any questions or comments you may have, any concerns you may have. Now is the time to express those, as this is the final reading and presumably will be acted on tonight.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Wager.
I would just ask any of the representatives of Duke, is there anything that you would like to call to our attention that you think that we may not have asked you or that you may have not mentioned to us that is important for us to know?
Ladies and gentlemen of the council, Nathan Hagerman, CAF, Stentinius and Hollister for Duke Energy Renewable Solar LLC. The company at this time is here to answer questions for the final reading. We did make our full presentation at the prior meetings, and we're happy to answer questions and work through any questions that you might have on that. But at this time, we did not have additional presentation materials for the council.
Mr. President.
Councilwoman Wilson.
Hi, I just wanted to clarify that the tax abatement that you're requesting is for the personal property, the infrastructure solely, not the real property, correct?
Yes, that's correct. The economic revitalization area abatement area allows abatements for both personal and real. This application is for the personal property tax abatement.
Thank you. I thought that was the case. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yes.
And I think maybe why that question is raised, in the final action that was presented to us, in the fourth paragraph on the first page, it says it's a petition for a 10-year real and personal property tax abatement, which I think that's just standard language when it's in an economic revitalization area in ERA, correct?
Correct, yes.
So that's just
Yeah.
standard language that's always used.
Correct. The active form is the sorry, the back page of the application where the council would approve the form, indicating the term of years and the type of abatement granted.
So what he's referring to there, if I'm not mistaken, is a statement of benefits form.
Yes, the SB1 UD for the utility distributable property, correct.
So everybody should have that. So page 2 is where you would sign off and indicate the number of years. Section H.
Did I have that?
Did you get that?
I had it somewhere. We've had this. I don't know if everybody had it. That form was, that would have been in the April packet for sure. Again, it's form SB1 UD, statement of benefits. Yeah, if you don't mind.
I believe it was maybe 2 weeks ago that you supplied me with an amended SB 1, approximately 2 weeks, in which they amended the salary portion. They adjusted that and then also changed the manufacturing equipment cost from, I think it was 116 to 100,000 on the, per million. And then the salaries was from 240 to 200,000, but I'll go make a copy of that.
Yeah, correct. The final application was, the signed application was submitted on April 30th with the correct range of salaries and investment.
Yeah. I think everyone should have received that through email a week and a half to 2 weeks ago. The updated, revised SB1. Let's all make copies of that. So if we can move forward.
Okay, I have one more
Sure.
question.
Absolutely.
Am I to understand the document that was just presented to Aaron, that you would be amenable to the 7-year abatement as opposed to the 10 that was presented by Tyler Kuhn?
Correct. At our earlier meetings, we did apply for the 10-year abatement. The council in its discretion may grant a abatement of a shorter period based upon our application for the 10 years. And we've supplied a proposal for a 7-year abatement with a different sliding scale than just the 10% straight for each of the 10 years.
And you're okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
And you're okay with the 7-year versus the 10?
Since they
Yes,
presented it, I'm
yes,
assuming.
that is the purpose of us
Okay.
presenting that, was
Okay.
that we heard that feedback and we wanted to be responsive.
So I would just, I think it's important to state that the 7-year information you were provided previously through the worksheet is some of that information was a straight state standard 7-year abatement, whereas this is a modified schedule. So I think it's just important to know what exactly you would approve if you were to do something different than the 10-year standard that was asked previously. So if it's the 7-year modified, which has been presented to us by Mr. Kuhn, or the 7-year state standard schedule, because they are different. So I think that's just important to know.
And what will we be voting on, the modified?
It's whatever the
Whichever we
council
moved,
desires.
whatever we removed.
I mean, what is presented to us right now in the final action is the standard 10-year, and that's what you would see, essentially what you're going to see on the first page of the insert provided at the beginning of the meeting. Is that correct? That
That's
Tyler
correct.
had sent?
Yes, that's correct. You could, one council member could move that forward, or you could proceed with another route.
So really, what we have before us is what has been presented as a standard 10-year abatement. We can move forward with that or move forward with any variation that the council so desires, but would require amended language within the final action, which in looking at that, to me, it would look like the amended language would occur on page 13 of your booklet, within the resolution, section 2. Within section 2, it talks about the personal property tax abatement over a 10-year deduction period under Indiana state statutes. So that is what is presented right now as the final action. If you wanted to modify that, language would have to be amended and presented for vote. That'd be amended within that paragraph of the resolution. Okay, so we'd have to amend that language, vote on the amended language, then if it passed, vote on what was passed as the amended language. I hope I made that clear.
Yes.
Councilman Norris.
Mr. Coons? Or whichever. Based off of what we're voting on tonight, obviously part of this property lies in Vigo County, part of it lies in Sullivan County. So does what we vote on, what does that change? If Sullivan County shoots it down, where are we at? Does that make sense? I mean, if we say yes and Sullivan County says no, does this project go away?
Not likely, and we will fight to make sure it doesn't go away. That's what our approach would be. But we may shift, we may look to acquire more land rights in Vigo County. If that's the way it plays out and Vigo County is willing to grant the abatement, Sullivan County says no, then we may look to build more in this county, and quite frankly, vice versa. So, our understanding as a developer in Indiana is that the 10-year abatement that we propose is kind of the standard, and we know that has been issued by other counties for similar projects. We've got to be cost competitive at the end of the day with those projects. And I want to make sure, I think I covered that in the first meeting, but we're not here as a utility company that would base rate the improvements here. We're going to be operating in a competitive marketplace. If our product is ultimately priced competitively, it'll be successful and be built, and you'll see all the revenue that's in that table and beyond through the 35, 40-year period of the project. If it's not competitive, then it just simply will not get built. So yeah, we will be looking to be competitive and build this project however we can. And we'll be meeting very shortly with Sullivan County to have very similar conversations.
Okay, yeah, that was my next question.
Starting this week, in fact.
But you haven't met with them prior to this?
We have not.
Okay.
Councilman Morris.
Just from past experience, understand that we're competing against other counties throughout the state of Indiana to get this business. And, you know, the amended 7-year, there's only $122,474 difference. I'm okay with that. I'd rather go with that versus the regular 7 years difference. In other words, I like what Mr. Kuhn did on the adjusted 7 years. So that's, if you guys are.
Yeah, we're okay with either of those options. The modified 7-year that we presented or the 10-year.
Or the 10-year, yeah.
Those
I-
essentially perform comparably in the
Right.
financial model of our project.
It's very close. I agree. I yield.
Councilman Wilson.
Just one more statement that kind of goes along with that. I think what we really need to be doing is looking at the long range rather than just, oh my gosh, we're going to give an abatement for this amount of money. The abatement is on, the way I see it is we're going to just postpone the amount of time that you're going to start paying taxes on the infrastructure. There's going to be taxes that's going to continue being paid on the property, and it's just a very small amount in comparison to the overall big picture. And I agree, I like the modified 7-year abatement plan that you presented. And I appreciate you doing that because I appreciate the fact that you heard our concerns and made that without us really pushing it. So,
Sure.
thank you.
Be a long-term neighbor here.
Councilwoman Thies.
Speaking of long-term neighbor, I want to assume that we'll continue some of those partnerships that we had talked about, like as far as working with our community and supporting different initiatives in our community, working with maybe getting some of those kids in there. Is that,
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we'd love to involve educational opportunities in our projects. Yeah, definitely working with the schools in providing opportunities, which could include coming into your schools and helping you develop curricula around the energy industry, or field trips out to the sites, or other specified funding that we may be able to help with through our foundation. All of those are options that we look at being a member of the community long term.
All right. That's something I will continue to follow. Thank you.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Councilwoman Wager.
How many solar farms have you built?
Our company has built about 55 nationwide,
And
utility scale plants, so large.
where was the last one you did?
Let's see, we had several built last year in Texas, one in Idaho. I think those would be the most recent. 2 projects in Texas, 1 in Idaho.
What kind of terms on your abatements did they give you?
Good question. So in Texas, it was a 100% abatement for 10 years with a pilot. That's the standard there. So we negotiated a pilot payment in lieu of taxes. Can't speak to the Idaho project because I don't have firsthand knowledge, but we've seen these. 10 years is fairly typical. It varies. In some cases, it's a flat 50% for that 10-year period. In other cases, there's 100% abatement with a pilot payment. Those are the typical abatements we see in other states.
Have you ever had any go bad on you? Any of them?
You mean an abatement
just-
decision or
yeah.
a council
Just-
declined to issue an abatement?
Right.
I'm sure we have. I personally don't have much knowledge on that. I mean, there's probably cases where a council has voted to decline and the project was never built in that vicinity. So, but that's just a guess. I'd have to check with the greater team that develops these projects and see if there's any specific example.
Thanks.
Not every decision goes our way. I
So
know that
hard
by
to
experience.
believe.
Any other questions or comments from council? I have just one. I think it was covered in the first meeting last month, but I just want to ask again, just for clarification. To the extent at which it's practical, are the local labor organizations going to have the opportunity to do work at this site?
The answer is yes. I mean, we haven't hired an EPC contractor at this point in time, so we don't know exactly what the plan is going to be. But as a standard, as a rule, we always advertise locally, hire locally, train locally, so to the extent a local workforce can be found, we talked about 200 construction jobs on a project this size. So to the extent the resources can be found locally, that's what we will favor. And we may have a contractor coming in from another region, bringing kind of the management and oversight that takes a certain skill set and size to be able to take on a project in this manner. But we try to hire as much locally as we can.
Thank you. If there are no further questions or comments, I would open it up for discussion on what the council would like to do in terms of moving forward with this final action.
Well,
Again?
I'd like to make a move to amend it to the 7-year modified proposed by Duke or Mr. Kuhn. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, so, to be clear,
The 7-year,
Resolution number 2.
7-year tax abatement schedule modified.
so just make sure we're all on the same page.
In this handout, we were given the second page.
Even over a 10-year deduction period under Indiana statutes. Further down, it again states over a 10-year deduction period. And then the second to last line, begin on the third to last line, towards the end, personal property tax deduction over a 10-year deduction period. So where it states 10-year deduction period under Indiana state statutes the first time, then 10-year deduction period the second time, and then 10-year deduction period the third time. If I'm understanding you correctly, what you're proposing, Councilman Morris, is to go with the 7-year modified schedule presented by Mr. Kuhn.
Corrected.
Second.
So, we have a motion on the floor by Councilman Morris to amend that language in the resolution. There is a second by Councilwoman Wilson. Are there any questions about what is before us at this time? So what you're voting on now is to amend the language from 10-year to 7-year modified. Is everyone clear? Mr. Auditor, could I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Ms. Swager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. So motion to amend carries. Now, we need a motion to approve.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the abatement request for the 7-year modified abatement period presented by Duke today,
As amended.
as
As
amended.
amended. Second.
So we have a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Wilson, a second by Councilman Morris. Any questions or comments about what we're voting on? Appears to be none. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Ms. Swager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
It's going to get easier, isn't it?
I hope so, Don.
Yeah.
Moving on, additional appropriation ordinance 2021-09, ROC 2021-18, drug-free community. We have Mr. Halleck here to speak, is that correct?
All right, thank you very much. So I am the treasurer for Drug Free Vigo County. It's a local coalition that is created by the Criminal Justice Institute back in 1989. So these fees that I've asked to be appropriated, the $56,693 are actually drug interdiction fees. So they're not taxpayer dollars. They are fees that when somebody does something they shouldn't do, revolving alcohol or drugs, and they go to court, they'll pay these fees. 75% of the fee stays here locally, 25% goes back to the Criminal Justice Institute. At a local level, we then grant these dollars out in 3 categories of prevention, treatment, and law enforcement. And so, but every year we have to appropriate it because the funding body is the county council here, or the county. Did that pretty much sum it up, I think, right there? I know there's some new folks here, so I thought I'd.
Any questions or comments from council?
I have to take a moment to personally thank you for what you're doing in the community. I've served on the board way back, just for before I had kids. And I know you do a lot of programs that help and do intervention and work with law enforcement, so thank you.
We appreciate that. It never gets easy, and so the great thing about these dollars is that we're able to actually put them back in the community for programming. So we're thrilled to be able to do that.
Any other questions or comments, council? If there are none, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion on the floor by Councilwoman Thies, a second by Councilwoman Wager. There are no comments or questions. I'd ask for roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up, we have two additional appropriation ordinances which are essentially tied together. There was a presentation last week, and I think one of our decisions is, for one, if we want to move forward with what was presented, and then secondary, what fund, if we are to move forward and approve the request for the additional appropriation, what fund we would like to move forward with, either edit or county general. So we have additional appropriation ordinance 2021-10 ROC 2021-19, which is edit, and additional appropriation ordinance 2021-15 ROC 2021-19 county general. Are there any questions or comments from council regarding this request?
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Wager.
I checked in the auditor's office today. I think it would be wise to take it out of the county general. That's getting a little top-heavy, and the edit's getting a little slim. We've got another deposit that's coming into the county general in the next couple of weeks, as I understand it, and it's going to be even more so. I believe that. Am I correct on that, Mr. Auditor?
Yeah, based on our projections, we probably will end the year with about a conservative estimate of about 20 million in general fund by December 31st. And if we spend everything we've got appropriated in edit, we'll wind up with about 4.8 million there. We've been hitting it pretty hard, so I think we ought to give it a break.
That would be my
We've got,
recommendation.
Do you have the balance currently for edit? Do you know what that is, Jim?
last week it was 9.3 million. We're estimating we'll get another 3.7 million, and we have 8.1 million appropriated there. So by the end of the year, if you spend all your appropriations, you'll have should have about 4.8 million left. Yeah. General fund, when I checked last week, we had 17 million cash balance.
What was was it 2.8 million that we were setting aside out of edit for broadband, is that correct?
I think so, something around there.
And that has not came out yet, correct, out of that 9.3 that we're at now, right? Do we have opportunities to potentially, I think we discussed this last week, there are opportunities to potentially use COVID relief money for the broadband or the ARP?
Potentially, but I would, before I say, yeah, we definitely can use it, we need to wait and see what the rules are on that, like, and I'm basing that on what happened with the last CARES Act. They said that if you had previously appropriated money for a project, you couldn't use CARES Act for it. And if they do something like that, we won't be able to, but it potentially, I guess, could be broader than that. Generally, there's a rule with federal funds that they're to supplement your budgets, or not supplant what
Supplant, right.
you've had there. And I'm afraid, after giving it some thought, that might be the case with this.
Do we know when to anticipate the new rules, or the rules to
There-
come out for the
There was,
ARP?
the Treasury Department issued a bunch of rules yesterday, but I haven't had a chance to go
Right,
through,
lengthy.
to read that 55 pages.
Right, right. Councilman Wilson?
Should we vote on the project before we vote on where, I mean, should we discuss the project before we discuss where the money's coming out of first?
I mean, I think it's all tied together. I think we can discuss the project and then pick which additional appropriation we choose. I don't know if we need to, we choose one, Mr. Effner, would we need to turn down the other one theoretically? Withdraw, okay. But I think that's discussion to occur. Do we want to move forward with the project as it's presented? Do we feel comfortable with that? And if that's the case, as a council, then what fund we want to move forward with? Just in the order of things, edit is first up on here. Additional appropriation ordinance 2021-10. So if, I guess maybe we need to have a motion first, and the other one theoretically be withdrawn.
Okay, so we're gonna do that first and then discuss the project?
No, we can discuss the project.
Because I do have another question about the
Sure,
project too. I just need some clarification. I mean, I asked this question last week, but I just need to clarify. This restroom is built, it's on Ivy Tech property, Ivy Tech will own it. Is that correct?
Yes, so, council members, Rachel Mullinex, Executive Director of the Ivy Tech Terre Haute Foundation. With me today is Chancellor Leanne Crooks from the Terre Haute campus as well to speak on a little bit or answer any questions that you might have about how this fits into the operations of Ivy Tech and the Terre Haute campus. As we spoke last week, yes, this would technically be part of our property, but we see this as it being a resource for the community that we are able to partner with the Parks Department to offer. So the big part on our end in that partnership being the operations and the facilities management. Again, Leanne, got additional questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we are looking at this as basically part of our maintenance of our facility staff. So sorry, I'm Leanne Crooks, Chancellor. Thank you for having us. So we're looking at this as an extension of our facilities contract. So we would add that into their cleaning and those types of things. However, and looking at it from the life of the building. If that answers your question.
Councilwoman Thies.
Thank you. Being new to kind of these partnerships, is there usually some sort of agreement or anything made that will clarify like the role of the county and working with you?
I think it's in the best interest of both of us if we do that. We started through our legal side with an MOU, basically outlining our responsibilities to keep the facility clean, that it is on our property, that it's a partnership, and it's next to our parking lot, which will allow access to the park as the trailhead. So we really, just as the community college, we look at this as our way to give back to the community, and so we would want to capture that in the MOU for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman.
I'm might add that an initial draft of an MOU is in the works. We've had a brief chance to review that on our end. Like to bolster a couple of sections before we send that on to the commissioners. Particularly, we really want to outline the lifetime purpose of the building to make sure that it is clearly articulated what the building's purpose is going to be as far as for park patrons, and really articulate then again the lifetime of it.
Thank you. I have one more question. I wasn't quite sure to understand. So from when you were talking about the COVID funding coming in, Mr. Bramble, did you say that in the last round, we couldn't go back on previous projects, or what was the language? So because like with the broadband, we've already approved that.
Yeah, in the CARES Act, you were prohibited from using that to replace, there was a date, like anything that had been previously appropriated prior to March 3rd of last year. So it had to be something new that you were doing.
That was working on.
That you were doing. And, this may or may not be the case here.
We just don't know. In your opinion, then which fund would you recommend?
I'd use the general fund.
General? Okay, you support that idea.
Any other questions or comments from council?
All right, one more question.
No, you're fine. Go
I-
ahead.
I'm just still a little bit concerned. Should we not have a copy of the MOU before we even make a decision on any of this? Because it seems like we make the decision, then we get the MOU, we may not agree with that once it's in place, and then we're, go ahead.
Brendan Kearns, County Commissioner. At today's meeting, we acknowledge that we are in process. Lawyers are kind of getting in the way, Mr. Commissioner, as we can appreciate, right? We want to make sure that everything is lined up appropriately. One thing that we talked about, if you give the blessing today, the MOU comes back unsatisfactory, we're good with not moving forward, I guess is a way to look at it. We're looking at, strategy-wise, how can we get things in motion fiscally? We were a little late in the game on getting the attorneys together, and we hope to have something probably by this time next week. But we wanted to make sure that we move things forward if we can today, and if for some reason we don't feel that the MOU is good, then we don't move forward.
You don't sign.
We don't sign it. But I say that up here with
But the money will
confidence
be
that it's
out.
going to
Like I
work
said,
out too,
yeah.
so.
What types of thing would not be agreeable then? I mean, what are we looking at?
What were a couple of the items that you mentioned when we talked today?
The lifetime section is a big thing that both parties could be added to it. So in the initial draft from our side, we had not clearly articulated that. So we're sending that feedback back to Google that we really need to make sure, in order to give the county the assurance that it needs, that we articulate what our commitment to the lifetime of the facility is, and that it is an agreeable timeline and one that aligns with vision for the park, right? What we do not want is for us to move forward with an MOU that does not articulate the lifetime, and then a year from now, we say, oh, well, something else to be done with that building, right? From Ivy Tech, we know that we're not going to do that under today, but we want to be able to give the county that assurance as well. So that's a big part of what we want to add. The purpose of the building, just further defining that this is a restroom facility for park patrons, for Rubel Park patrons. Adding that in there again, because it is going to be on Ivy Tech's property, it'll be technically part of Ivy Tech's facility structure. So we want to make sure that it is clearly outlined this building is solely for county residents, for park patrons. And then believe there was one other item that we were discussing as far as the locking and the times of the doors, making sure that we are all okay, that again clearly aligns with our hours, and that is going to be able to serve those park patrons. So apologize that we do not have an MOU in front of you today. It was our hopes that we would be able to get one, but we want to make sure that what we do present is one that is going to be agreeable by all parties. So if the county council is open to approving a request contingent upon the signed MOU or an agreeable MOU, that would allow us to move forward in the funding process in a timeline that's going to allow for us to have the facility built by the opening in September.
Thank you.
When we talk about lifetime and different language like that, is there any discussion about what occurs in the event that something catastrophic would occur, the Ivy Tech is no longer around? Does the county then have ownership of the property, of the facility? I mean, has that been discussed?
It is a portable building, so it's going to.
Oh, is it portable?
Yeah, it's going to come in on a trailer.
Okay.
Oh, no
kid.
And we're pouring the concrete pad, so it would just leave a concrete pad that we own, that we're paying for.
I think we just want to make sure that in the event something like that would occur, or maybe in the event that a new chancellor came in and didn't want it on the property any longer, that we would retain rights to that.
And your insurance would cover any kind of damage from tornado, fire, theft. Somebody wants to. You know, it's a win for all of us that our investment is mine structure.
Right.
And the utilities are already on Ivy Tech's side. If we were to put a restroom facility over on our property just across the road, I say this anecdotally, we could probably easily add another $100,000 because we don't have those water.
Right.
We're gonna have to bring electricity in. So this is a good way to partner to get this done. It helps everybody. Again, our investment is buying unit, and they take it from that point on.
Sure. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
President.
Mr. Effner?
In regard to the memorandum of understanding, is that going to be done pursuant to the statute on a local cooperation agreement?
So we're actually mirroring that, I think. Melissa, you forwarded us something?
The statute, yes.
Yeah, and that was,
Okay,
current. They forwarded it to somebody else, got forwarded, so,
okay.
yes.
And you're submitting that to your county attorney?
As soon as we get it from Ivy Tech, it'll, our county.
Okay. Thank you.
When do we anticipate, like if this gets approved, when do we anticipate the project starting and things?
So for us, we have to go through Public Works, obviously, so we have the bid packet ready as soon as we have the funding in place and the MOU is sealed. So we know we're up against the time crunch to meet the September, so we have to move quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? If there are none, I'd entertain.
Can I add something real
Oh,
quick?
sure. Let's see.
When we're talking about operating balances, I think it's important to put it in perspective that when we're talking about a $20 million operating balance for county general, the county general fund has a budget of approximately $40 million annually. So, and then if you're looking at the edit budget, you're looking at approximately a $5 million budget. It receives over $5 million annually in revenues, and you're looking at almost a $5 million operating balance is on top of that. So in perspective, I mean, it's not really the same. They're not equal.
Generally, recommending that DLGF and various professional organizations recommend now that we have like a 2-month cash balance in our in our operating funds, and we're running half a year. So we've really got a healthy balance in that general fund.
We do have healthy balance, but we also there have been concerns about future revenues and what's gonna happen, so.
Well, we've already got that covered. Revenues, if they are harmed by this COVID crisis, that's one of the definite things that we can use this $20 million we're going to be getting is for revenue replacement. So that I don't see as an issue.
You know, the commissioners
That's-
made this request, and we did it for edit funds only because economic development, and to me, this is an incredible use of that money. It is economic development and enhances quality of place. That's the only reason why we're requesting it from economic development, because it makes sense. So where it comes from,
Yeah.
I think we're good with whatever you decide, as long as we move forward with the project.
So do you need a motion to withdraw 2021-10 ROC 2021-19 edit?
I think we're clean on the project itself, right? We don't have any other questions or comments. So I think you guys can, so you're not just standing there waiting for us. I don't want you to have to stand there. So I think our next discussion is edit versus general fund and where everyone's at with that.
To me, the recommendations have all been from general fund.
What was that?
General fund.
For my decision, that's what I do.
You're the one that handles the money.
You're the one that makes the decision.
I mean, my thoughts personally, as Commissioner Kearns had stated, I think edit funds are more appropriate because it's an economic development project, in my assessment. You know, there's a lot of needs for the general fund, obviously, but it's, you know, you could ask 10 people and get half a dozen different sound reasonings behind why they think one way or another. So I think we just need to, it seems like everyone is for the project, from best I can tell. I think we just need to decide now where that comes from.
Mr. President, I tend to agree with the edit funds as well. I feel like this is such a partnership opportunity. Our parks are a great part of our economic development, quality of life in our community. And, you know, I'm new to it, so, you know, I'm taking it all in. But I feel like this just has that written on, like when I read it, that's initially what I thought as well.
Mr. Effner, just so everyone's clear, hypothetically speaking, if a motion was made for one fund over another, and it did not get the support of the full council, then a motion could be made for the other fund, and the project would still be alive. Is that correct? Okay. So is everyone clear on that? So I think we just have a motion, roll with it, see what happens, and then if it succeeds, it does. If it doesn't, then we can move on to the next fund. I think it's probably that simple for us. I know there's some anxiety with some people and a little bit of heartburn here, but I think that's where we're at. So I'd entertain a motion, whatever that looks like at this time.
I'm not so good at this, so I'm gonna give it a shot. I make a motion to move out of the edit fund for, I don't have it. I need to state the number. 170,000 for, then do I say here? The This is why I never do this.
2021-10.
2021-10. Thank you. ROC.
So the motion on the floor, if I'm correct, is to move forward and approve additional appropriation ordinance 2021-10 ROC 2021-19 edit. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we have a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Thies. Is there a second? If there is not a second, then the motion will die. Is there a second? The motion dies. Is there another motion from council?
Mr. President,
Councilman Morris.
I'll make the motion that we approve appropriation ordinance 2021-50 and ROC 2021-19 County General of the amount of $170,000.
Second.
So there's a motion on the floor by Councilman Morris, second by Councilwoman Wager. Any further discussion or comments? Appears there are none. Ask for roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Nay.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Nay. Motion carries. Mr. Afner, the motion died on the edit. Do we need to have that withdrawn at this time still? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Moving on, we have resolution of reallocation of existing appropriation 2021-04, ROC 2021-20, Juvenile Justice Center. We heard this request last week, along with some others, and as you will recall, it was a transfer of funds from the food line item, which is number 24500, to the vehicles line item, number 44460, an amount of $31,000. Is that correct? Any questions or comments from council about this? Again, it's just a reallocation of existing funds, moving some money around. Any questions or comments? If there are none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion on the floor to approve by Councilman Thompson, second by Councilwoman Wilson. If there are no questions or comments, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Aye.
Thies,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, Miss Wilson, excuse me,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye, motion carries. Next, we have additional appropriation. Ordinance 2021-11, ROC 2021-021. It's listed as Juvenile Justice Center. We heard this request again last week. As you might recall, it was regarding building repair. There was a list of items that were presented to us. Different repairs to the building, along with money requested out of locks, audio, and video, which pertain to the security camera system for the transport vehicle. Are there any questions or comments about that?
Mr. President?
Councilwoman Wilson.
Just some clarification. We talked last week about you presenting your request to the commissioners for the building repairs, since it falls in their jurisdiction. Did you happen to talk to anyone about that?
So, no, I have not. Not in this week time period we've had. Because this is a non-reverting fund, it's not tax dollars, it's user fees. So if we appropriate the money, and in the meantime, before these things can be done, if we have a chance to talk to the commissioners and they agree to pay for some of these items, then, obviously that money will revert back to the non-reverting fund, no harm, no foul. So we have a couple of pretty big projects that need to be cared for at the juvenile center. One is the ceiling to the rec area. It's not going to be cheap to repair. They're going to have to pay for that. I don't have the money. With respect to the outdoor rec area, there is a problem with water getting into the mortar on the bricks, and that's not something I can pay for. As the consultant with the report that I sent to you, I'm not going to be able to pay for that. So, I don't want to go dipping at the well for something that is small that I can pay for with user fees. If we're going to use tax dollars, and especially the commissioner's funds to maintain the building, then I would like it to be for something big, like the ceiling or to repair the roofing around the outdoor rec area. So, we installed a washer and dryer, and part of the installation of that was to run a gas line. The gas line was $2,500. We sent the bill to the commissioners, they sent it back. Because, I don't know why, but we had to pay for it. It seems to me like that gas line's part of the building, but we had to pay for it. So based upon that philosophy, I decided maybe I needed to pay for some of these also, and that they would take care of the bigger picture stuff. So that's why we haven't gone to them yet. Between the time that we had our meeting on Tuesday and today, the only opportunity I'd had to been there to speak with him would have been today. And we had other things going on, and I didn't have a chance. So I hope that.
So you don't know for sure if they will or won't pay for this, you're just assuming that they would only want to pay for the bigger items?
Yes.
Okay.
Or better yet, I haven't asked them.
Okay.
Councilman Norris?
So, Norm, am I correct in saying that if they decline the repair to the essential items that you're talking about that need to be done, the ceiling and the brick and mortar and stuff like that, then you'll be back in to ask us for more? Is that correct?
Yeah, so I don't know what the budget is for the commissioners with the repair to buildings, and they have many buildings under their charge. So, maybe their focus this year is the Parks Department. And so I just received the report, as you know, from the consultant that pointed out some of these things that need to be done. And then to get some of the general contractors that would do that commercial work to come and give me a quote, that's going to be another few weeks. And so then if we go to them and they say, well, the crack in the building is going to take $50,000, and the repair to the outdoor rec area is going to take another $20,000, and the ceiling for the rec room is going to be $30,000. I would take those quotes to the commissioners and say, look, here's an idea of what we're talking about. If they say, well, we don't have the money, then I would hope that they would come with me to to ask for more money to do that. Or that they would prioritize, we don't need to do that this year, let's do that next year. We've got some things going on with the Parks Department. So then we would have that conversation then, because it's obviously a bigger item versus what I would call a bunch of smaller items that I would just rather take care of with a user fee. Let Clay County and Putnam County pay for some of the things we need to do over there and not burden the taxpayers.
What's your status on the non-reverting fund right now as far as what's its balance and what do you anticipate it being?
The balance prior to this, 99,000. I'm sorry, go ahead. So to be, sorry. To be precise, as of May the 5th, we have $99,473.02. And we just deposited 10. So we deposited about 10,000 just, after this figure was done. And then we probably have 18 to 20,000 sitting in detention, which means those detainees haven't even been billed yet because they haven't left. We don't bill the counties till they leave. So, we're looking at, and then there's, well over probably 125, 130,000, and that's as of today. Obviously, as we get more detainees and release them, it's perpetuating all the time. So more than enough in there to cover the money that was budgeted by the council that we've used a lot of, but we just don't have any more in the building repair portion, and to cover this appropriation.
Any additional questions or comments from council?
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Wilson?
I'm not happy with the way that it's worded. It's like part of the building repairs could be building repairs, could be other, like the security system or the building consultant fee and report. I'm not sure. I mean, I do understand that there are things that need to be upgraded and updated and repaired, but that's not all building. And so I don't know how do we separate out if we want to approve part of it and not the other part?
Mr. President?
Yes.
So if the State Board of Accounts approves a certain item that can be placed into a line item to be paid for, like a consultant fee, could come out of building repairs because that's obviously something to do with building repairs, or the security system that is obviously a repair to the building is building repairs. But each one of these items could go into that, but it also could be in any number of other items. Some of them could be for equipment or office supplies or any other description given by the State Board of Accounts or Department of Local Government Finance that put those line items in a budget. And so what we choose to call them, I don't think is a big deal. It just determines whether or not you feel like that you want the non-reverting fund to pay for these items.
Right.
Now, if you give me direction that says, before any of these are paid for, we want you to go to the commissioners and ask that, well then, I'm willing to do that. But there are many things in here that are kind of a must, and when we established a non-reverting fund, part of the description in the ordinance that the commissioners passed was to help fund repairs to building. So even if they have a line item for repairs to building, we would have that line item also. Matter of fact, I have one in my general fund, and we've established one in the non-reverting fund as well. We're just asking for some more money to be added there.
I really don't mean to belabor it, but because you put it under building repair, I'm wondering if these building repair items need to go to the commissioner because that is
So
their.
let me ask, are you against any of these items being paid for out of the non-reverting fund?
The things that are building related, yes.
Okay, so then the problem is with that is that when the commissioners wrote the ordinance, they wrote it to allow for building repairs to be done.
So you should be talking to the commissioners about the building repairs.
Well, I think the
Is that
building
not
repairs
right?
can be done by several different places, not just the commissioners, because the council gives me money to do building repairs.
The ordinance, when you establish a fund, you're setting money aside for particular purposes. And that ordinance defines what it can be used for. I don't have it in front of me now, but
Right.
building repairs to buildings are one of them. So I guess it follows then that the commissioners approving the fund and the uses of that fund have approved it for building repairs,
Okay,
not
that's,
just the individual.
that's the way I'm understanding it, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it by saying because these are all lumped under building repairs, that's a commissioner responsibility.
Well, not necessarily, okay, so, Ms. Wilson, the thing is that, in my opinion, because in my normal budget that this council approves, there's a line item for building repairs. So that means that the council believes that there should be some responsibility that I take to take care of my building with my own budget. So what I've tried to do is to try to make every councilman up here look good, which is to use user fees to help supplement our general fund. So instead of taking money from the taxpayers to put a carport out back to park our new vehicle under, that we might use money that we get from Clay County, or Putnam County, or Fountain County, or Owen County, because those are simple user fees. And so this is nothing more than a way for you to be able to allow us to spend money that isn't a tax burden on the property owners. And quite frankly, as a former city councilman, I think that's what we're all striving for, is to find some way to fill the candy dish without burdening our taxpayers, our voters. And so we established this non-reverting fund to be able to try to do that. I know that it's a new thing for the county council. The city council does it with an ambulance user fee, where we take people to the hospital, we bill for those ambulance fees, and then those ambulance fees are used to buy equipment for the fire department. And yes, it's the responsibility of the city to buy equipment, but this is a way to help supplement what the city buys by using a user fee. And so, obviously, I will work diligently next week to contact the commissioners and go through every single small project I have and will, get whether they are willing to fund any of those or not and get that right back to you. If they are willing to fund it, and I promise you, I will not spend one dime of that money, and it will revert back to the non-reverting fund at the end of the year. But I just wanted to set your mind at ease. Sometimes what the commissioners feel as a necessity maybe isn't. For me, maybe it's a necessity for the Parks Department, or maybe they have plans to use that money for something else. So I just thought this was a way to try to help them, quite frankly.
Councilman Norris?
President Loudermilk, my question to both you and Norm Loudermilk, is this something that we would necessarily be opposed to tabling until he gets the rest of his estimates in on the rest of the repairs, and then proceeding with it at the next county council meeting? Is that something that we can do?
I would say it's always within your rights and your ability to do, but I would say if that was what the council decided to do in this instance, then it would not be voted on until June 8th. As the June 1st meeting, which is the sunshine meeting, is not a voting meeting, so we would not actually take action until June 8th on this if it was to be tabled. So I would assume Norm's response is going to be, well, I want to get these repairs done sooner rather than later. I'd say it's probably fair.
If I can, so that's a great question. Yes, you can table it for a period of time or for 6 months or whatever you want. I mean, you're the boss. But as I look through some of these things, some of them are right now.
Well, and that was going to be my next question, was.
The HVAC flow test we had to have done was a right now thing. So, we need that money. Security system project, when it was approved by the council last year, they just didn't give me enough money. And so we need money. We've received the second invoice, and we don't have enough. Some of the things are our fault, that we never bid out a security system, so we didn't know we needed commercial grade monitors. And so, we're having to fund that. But as I told the council last year, is that if you give me some money with this non-reverting, I'll find the remainder of it. And so, based on that promise, the council approved $231,000 so that I can start this system. The bid came in at $235,000. So the day the day the project started, I was $5,000 in the negative. And then when we start seeing some of those change orders that occur, where, well, you need a camera here, we didn't figure that, or, the deputy sheriff asked for an emergency button in case we have an active shooter. Well, that's a little bit more money. We forgot to add the 4 commercial monitors. Well, that's $1,500 a piece. What do we do? Well, in those situations, it was always going to be me to find the money. That was a promise that I made to the council when they approved the security system. Some of the things we've added in since then, for instance, when they did the server for the security system, it made the room extremely hot. And so now there's a problem with the temperature of the server room. So we're going to have to add an air control, like an air conditioning unit for IT stuff. And so, we didn't know we were going to have to do that. And so that popped up just now, some things have happened as we've gone. We just found out, hey, maybe we could use new windows for the control room. That is not a right now thing. So yes, that could be something that the commissioners, if they agree to, could pay for. The carport, it's not really repair to building. It fits in that line item as far as the definition from all the accountant people, but we could put that in equipment or something, but it's an improvement to the grounds, so that's why we put it there. I don't need to have a carport, but I thought that if we got a brand-new vehicle, maybe we'd like to do what we could to try to keep it as nice as possible for as long as possible, because I don't think the council's in the business of just giving vehicles all the time. And then miscellaneous improvements, that's just for things that just are popping up, whatever we might need. Fixing a lock, COVID has required us to go to a different vendor because one of the vendors closed down to get locks for our cells. So we are paying what was going to be $800 for 4 locks, we paid $4,000. There's no way around it. So those are things that we're experiencing where we weren't budgeting for that stuff. But yes, to answer your question, I think you can table it. You can reduce it. You can say, well, we're just going to give you $30,000 or whatever and take care of some of these things if you want to amend it. And that at least gets me through several items that I think we need, that are important. Obviously, the locks and audios and video, that's an important part. I would hate to see the proposal tabled because we need that for the security system, for the vehicle, for the transports. But, and that may make, Mrs. Wilson happy with being able to reduce the amount to take out some of the items that she's concerned with. That maybe, would be a more commissioner thing. And I can, which, believe me, I don't want to, but I can keep coming back, and asking for money from that fund, but I'm pretty sure if we took a vote, everybody'd say we're sick of you talking.
We're supposed to vote now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe real quick, I'll try to help. The commissioners are over the buildings themselves, and they oversee the repairs. What he's asking for is a funding source for some of the repairs that would alleviate the need for the commissioners to pay for it out of the general fund. Now, granted, this money originally that's in this non-reverting fund was originally deposited before it was established in the general fund. So it's been pulled from the general fund, gives you a funding source dedicated to the juvenile center. And, I mean, I would think that there are some things that are not structural that he may proceed with, but he would have a discussion with the commissioners. He would probably discuss it with the commissioners before he put a carport on their property, just to keep peace in the family. But that's kind of how that works. I don't know if that helps or not.
I mean, as we discussed last week, I think, you know, these are revenues created from holding the detainees there, created by that department. You know, if he expends all the funds for building repairs, and there's an emergency, then he's kind of in a bad spot, and we talked about that last week. That's just kind of where it's at. I mean, it's funds that have been generated by the work that they do. It's funds that they're allowed to use. He thinks it's a good use of the funds, and I presume. And if they're all expended at the end of the year, and he has some big ticket item that doesn't fall under the commissioner's authority, then it could become problematic. But provided there isn't, everything theoretically should be fine.
Got a crystal ball.
No, I said theoretically.
Mr. President, Ms. Wilson, if you wanted to reduce this amount to, say, 45,000 or 40, that would eliminate some of the things that I want to do right now, would push me to go to the commissioners to ask, but yet I would still have some money to be able to do some of the things I need to kind of get done now because it's getting to kind of crunch time. But that's just an option, obviously.
Just my initial tally here, I would be
Or we
comfortable
can
with reducing it by
approve the whole thing like it is.
$30,000, because some of those things I see are definitely commissioner type things.
I mean, the
I'm sure that
ask
could be amended on the floor.
The ask can be reduced to any amount. You just can't exceed what was advertised. So that's where we're at. You can't exceed the number, but you can reduce it to any amount.
And Ms. Wilson, you can make a motion to amend it to a lower amount. If they approve that, then or you can
Well, I was just
vote on it
about
like
to
it
ask.
is, if you want to.
Thank you. Just about to say that.
So again, as we did earlier, if there was an amendment to be made, it had to be presented, voted on, and then the amended action, what was amended, need to be voted on as well. Any questions?
We've got a question.
Councilman Thompson?
Mr. Bramble, the fund that this is coming from, I've got Juvenile Justice Center non-reverting fund, and then it says non-reverting Juvenile Justice Center Care of Prisoners Fund. Are
I'd
they
have,
the same fund, or should they?
yeah.
Did I
I'd
make a
have to look
mistake?
at you have the ordinance, we know what you're talking about, but it's the same fund, but the ordinance
Does
was,
the appropriation need to be amended, that wording, or does that make a difference?
I don't.
Are the numbers
We-
correct,
Well,
but the wording's wrong?
here's what I guess the crux of the matter are these account numbers. And that's what you're voting on.
Oh.
You're voting on fund number 4959.
Okay.
So theoretically, if you're wanting to make an amendment to what has been presented, it would be under the building repair 4959.35450.000.0000. So that's on page 19.
Okay.
So, do we have a
That's what's
motion?
in-
Yes, excuse me, President.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Councilwoman Wilson.
I would like to move that, okay, I'm gonna make sure I get this right. Additional appropriation ordinance 2021-11 ROC 2021-021, Juvenile Justice Center Non-Reverting Fund, I guess subcategory 4959.35450.000.0000, Building Repair Fund. Requested amount was $65,760. I would like to move that that be amended to $35,760.
So Councilwoman Wilson has motion on the floor to amend out of building repair, line item 35450, from $65,760 to $35,760, reduction of $30,000, which would bring the total down to $38,760. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
So that is the amended information on the floor. Is there a second? If there is not a second, the amended motion will die. Is there a second? The motion dies. Is there another motion to be presented?
Council President, I'd like to make a motion
Councilman Thompson?
that we approve the additional appropriation ordinance 2021-11 as stated.
Second.
So we have a motion on the floor by Councilman Thompson to approve additional appropriation ordinance 2021-11 as presented, ROC 2021-021, second by Councilwoman Wager. Any other comments, questions, thoughts before we proceed? Having none, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Nay.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Ms. Swager,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye.
Oh, excuse me,
I was gonna say, do I
Ms.
get a vote?
Wilson.
You're out.
You're out. Ms. Wilson,
Nay.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on, we have salary ordinance 2021-12, ROC 2021-022, Juvenile Justice Center.
Mr. President,
Yes.
Norman Loudermilk, Executive Director, Juvenile Center. Thank God this is the last thing we're going to talk about. When I requested the 2 additional employees, the one thing that was kind of a mistake on my part was that there was an assumption by the auditor's office that we need additional revenue. And so I would like to make sure that we withdraw any appropriation for any additional revenue with respect to the employees. We have enough revenue in our line item for salaries to fund 2 new positions. I want to repeat that. Currently, with the budget that we have, that the council approved for 2021, for the remainder of the year, for 2 additional full-time employees and to cover relief staff, after meeting with people that are obviously smarter than I am, we went through the budget, or striked out the numbers that we have appropriated, the amount of money that we have been spending for salaries, some of the new rules we've implemented, and we think that we're able to make it through the remainder of the year with no additional increases in funding for the salary line. So just wanted to clear that up. I'd like 2 new positions, but I don't need any more money.
So we need to create the positions.
Correct.
You have the funds available.
That's the
Yes,
first
sir.
one, right? That's,
Right.
right.
But I didn't want that to stop you from this.
And then the additional appropriation, we're not gonna
I
address
can
that.
withdraw it or whatever you guys do.
Withdraw that, yes.
So do you know what the classification should be for those positions?
Detention officers? I don't know what you mean. The who? Okay,
What is it?
Civilian Pool A? Does that sound right to you?
it sounds right.
Or maybe it's not that.
I'm not an expert on Wagner and whatever, whoever it is.
So we need to create the two positions that are being asked for.
They would go-
Classification is civilian pool A. And that will be done in the salary ordinance that I just read off. And information is contained on page 20 of your booklet. Any questions or comments about that? So does this salary ordinance need to reflect a change in where the money is appropriated from, or where the money is coming from? So it would be out of the county general fund, as it's stated just below there. And that the two detention officer positions will be a civilian, Pool A. Is everyone clear on that? So we'll need to amend the salary ordinance to reflect such. So in section 2, rather than the Juvenile Justice Center, should read the county general fund. And then below, where it has Juvenile Justice Center, 0384, add 2 detention officers, should indicate the positions are civilian Pool A. So that should be the amended action if we choose to move forward.
Mr. President,
Councilman Morris.
move that we amend, you're going to have to walk me through this, 2021-12, County General Fund, Juvenile Justice Center, 0384. Instead of 2 detention officers, that will be, is that civilian
Pool A positions.
Thank you. And then instead of section 3, it should read section 2. So be it.
So strike the Juvenile Justice Center and insert county general fund.
Okay.
Just so we're clear, it's still for the 2 positions at a civilian Pool A.
Thank you.
Is everyone
Second.
clear? So we have an amendment on the floor by Councilman Morris, second by Councilman Wager. Any questions or comments, concerns? Appears there are none. I'd ask for a roll call vote on the amendment.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. And the motion carries. So now I would entertain a motion to approve as presented.
Mr.
Amended.
President,
As amended. I apologize.
move to approve.
Second.
Move to approve by Councilman Morris, second by Councilman Norris. There's no questions or comments. I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye, motion carries. And as we move along, additional appropriation ordinance 2021-12, ROC 2021-022, Juvenile Justice Center, that has been withdrawn, correct?
I would like to withdraw it, or however you do that. Yes,
Be
thank you.
withdrawn, thank you.
Mr. President, council members, thank you very much for your indulgence, and I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now get out of here.
Next, additional appropriation ordinance 2021-13, ROC 2021-023, Public Defenders.
Gretchen.
We heard this last week, and it was pertaining to purchase of a vehicle, $12,000.
For which we get back 4,000.
So do we, excuse me,
So we can either keep it as advertised or amend according to what the payout is.
Mr. President?
Councilwoman Wilson.
I move that we amend and approve the additional appropriation ordinance 2021-13 ROC 2021-23 Public Defenders motion for the payout amount of $10,271.
Before we do that, is that fund correct? Edit fund, the states? Okay, okay. So we probably need to, amend that as well. So you have an amendment to lower the amount from 12,000 to 10,271 and above. In section 1, we have edit fund. It needs to reflect what is in bold there, Public Defender Supplemental Fund.
Yes.
Is everyone clear on that, on what the amendment is? Is there a second?
I'll second.
So we have a minute action on the floor by Councilwoman Wilson, a second by Councilman Thompson. Any questions or comments? Appears there are none. I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Ms. Swager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. And the motion carries. So I would entertain a motion now to vote to approve the amendment,
So moved.
the amended ordinance. Apologize.
Move to approve the amended ordinance.
Second.
A motion on the floor by Councilwoman Wilson, second by Councilman Morris. There's no questions or comments. I'd ask for roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Ms. Swager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on, additional appropriation orders 2021-14, RC 2021-024, Homeland Security Fund. We heard this last week regarding a vehicle. Request is for $33,000. In looking at this ordinance, as it's presented in our
Says
booklet,
edit again.
yeah, I think we need to have an amendment. It states edit fund in section 1. So if we could have an amendment for the Homeland Security Fund, that would be helpful.
President Loudermilk.
Councilman Norris?
I make a motion to edit section 1 of additional appropriation ordinance 2021-14 to reflect the total Homeland Security Fund rather than the edit fund. And then, do I need to make a motion also on the other, or do I need to make that motion first?
No, I think that's.
Okay.
So we have a motion to amend by Councilman Norris. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Wilson. Any questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Ms. Swager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. Motion carries. I would now entertain a motion to approve the amended ordinance.
So, I approve that, I move that we approve the amended ordinance. Where'd it go? 2021-14, ROC 2021-24.
Motion on the floor by Councilwoman Wilson. Is there a second? Second by Councilwoman Wager. There are no comments or questions. I'd ask for roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies.
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Ms. Swager.
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on, we have before us additional appropriation orders 2021-16, ROC 2021-25, road closure fund. Mr. Robbins had spoke to us last week, essentially wanting to close out a fund that has not been used for some time. It's hiding in the corner, it looks like. I think he gave a fair presentation last week. Are there any questions or comments from council? If there are none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion on the floor by Councilwoman Wager, second by Councilman Thompson. Any questions or comments? Appears there are none. I'd ask for roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Ms. Swager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. Motion carries. Did you want to speak?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, salary ordinance 2021-13, ROC 2021-26, Vigo County Health Departments. We heard this ordinance, we heard this request for additional appropriation last week. This is a salary ordinance tied to the additional appropriation ordinance 2021-17, ROC 2021-26. So that those two items are tied together. The salary ordinance allows for the amendment of the compensation from $40,090 to $51,000 a year. And Ms. Wise is here if there's any questions or comments from council for her.
Yeah, Kara
Absolutely.
Wright, Director of Human Resources. I just want to clarify that what she put on there, you had 51,000, correct? That, didn't bring my paper. That was with her longevity pay. It was actually, she was asking for, sorry, I didn't bring the one that originally, I didn't bring it. Hold on. So it's minus her longevity from before. The 48.9 is what she was asking for. She added them together and put her longevity in there. She's not asking for that as a total. It was I didn't understand when I read it, so I'm sure it doesn't make sense either. So she's only asking for 48.9. I will tell you, I did look at the salaries of all the surrounding counties within the 7 counties that are 3 above us and 3 below us, and the average for last year was 47,770 and 60 cents for a job that has similar duties. If you added the percentage for inflation or whatever you call that, it would be about 49,000. So, I mean, what they're asking for isn't off. I personally have an issue with raising her amount and leaving her as a Cat B, because if Amanda left, then the next person who came in would go down to the beginning of that and would have a supervisor who's in the same group as the people she's supervising, making the same or less money. And that to me doesn't really make sense. It seems like there needs to be a Pat C in there for people who supervise people who are in a that makes, I mean, you've got people supervising people making the same amount of money, and that doesn't make sense in any schedule.
That's the world we live in.
Yes, it is, but as we move along, we should try to repair those problems when they show up. So, and I think this happened, I don't think it's anybody's fault when it happened. They just adjusted salaries along the way and didn't really look at the person right now. So, I mean, but what she's looking.
Mr. President, can we adjust that now? Would this not be the time to just adjust that now, Kara? Can we,
That would be your decision. I mean,
Adjust what?
to see?
And currently, we don't have a PAT seat in the ordinance. I mean, the county owns this salary, so you can do how you want. I know that we have a meeting with the WIS coming up, so I don't know how you feel with that, but in my opinion, yes.
Dynamite is for
People
them
can supervise people who are in the PAT B. If you raise them to the next one that's in our current, you would be putting them as an exec A, and they'd be making the same thing as the person running that whole department. So you can't just move her up. There's nowhere for her to fit is the problem. You can't just ask her up to the next level, because the next level moves her up to the same as the person who is her boss. So that's the issue. She's sitting in a,
So do we wait until this coming budget to boost her up, or you want us to do it now, or?
well, she's asking to have her pay increase now, because she's been doing this job for what?
Right.
Since late summer. Yeah.
Okay, that's.
Last year.
But that's not going to put any perils on you, any further employment problems.
It would only be an issue if she quit, and then you had to refill that position.
Right.
Because it wouldn't make sense to put her as a PAT.
Just-
you could go ahead and do the salary adjustment, and then could work with, however we decide to do that, put in another level for her. Needs to be somewhere else.
Do we have any information back from WIS at this point? No.
I don't have,
The commissioners were supposed to, I think. Commissioners.
okay, no, you do not, then that's why.
Brendan, did you?
No, he wanted me to meet, and I had called Melissa because I wanted her and I to talk about it and do it together, and not just one of or the other. I wanted to work as a team. We just weren't able to get together, so I went ahead and did my part of it.
I think we left the meeting last week with the understanding that we would have a report from you and also some type of documentation from WIS is where we left it last
So,
week.
I was programmed that we're going to meet in 2 weeks. I keep forgetting that we're doing it one Tuesday and then the following Tuesday, which is why I said in that meeting that we'll get it by Friday. And I didn't mean that immediate Friday. It was the following one, so that error was on my part. You reached out to Calissa Wednesday or Thursday. Kara asked several times to meet, so that way those two could work together.
You sound like Norm Loudermilk. You're talking an awful lot.
I'm sorry, I'll stop talking then.
No, so.
I mean, okay, whatever.
We're good.
I think, as Carrie was stating a while ago, kind of an issue you might get is if Amanda was to leave the position, correct? And that's kind of the issue, that's how we got into this dilemma we're currently in, when we increased the individuals that Amanda supervises, increased their pay structure.
Yeah, they got moved into a PAT B, and the person
Right.
that was already supervised had been grandfathered in at a much higher rate.
Right.
So nobody looked at it and said, oh my gosh.
So if, essentially, if I'm thinking about this correctly, essentially, if we act on this tonight, we're kind of repeating history. I mean, honestly.
But there's
And
nowhere
it-
for her, there's nowhere for her to go.
I know. I mean, we had to figure out a solution, but I was hopeful we were going to have something, along with your report, something from WIS, because that's what we were told last week.
Specifically, what type of information would you be looking for from the WIS?
I just want a report from them. I want somebody, an outside group, giving us a report. As I said last week, we did some things last month without their guidance, and I think that's probably not in the best interest of everybody to be doing those things, honestly. So from my perspective as one council member, I don't disagree that she should be paid more than those she supervises. Without question, she should. What that looks like, I don't know. I can't say. Kara has her report, and I'm not saying it's a poor report. It's probably spot on. But I think it's important for us as a county to develop a system, whether it's going with CARES research, whether it's staying with WIS, whatever that may look like, a combination of both. I think we need to figure out what that is and not shoot from the hip, because we're putting ourselves in a bad position from my perspective. I think it's.
And my thought would be, can we table this and I can get with WIS? Like I said, I was trying to together, then I found out I needed this sooner than I thought. So I'll be glad to call in tomorrow or whatever and try to set up something to talk to them about this. So can that happen, can it be done that way?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, me personally, I don't want to see this defeated. I really don't. And I know it's bad for Amanda, because then that means it gets put off for another month, right? And that stinks, and I get that. But there's also, I mean, there's also mechanisms we can use, if the council so desires, to support back pay to a certain extent as well, if the council has an appetite for that. So those are things to think about as well. So it's not as if she's going to keep losing from here. I think that the council could entertain back pay as well, if that's what they think is appropriate. So just some things to consider. I don't want to see it defeated and die tonight. I think it's important, but I think, as I said, we had to develop a sound system which makes sense for everybody. I think it's only fair.
I would strongly encourage a revisit of WIS, because we know that there are some serious flaws in this, but we also know that there's some good mechanisms.
Right.
But and I say that as county employees and as department heads, we have asked for years now to have those things fixed. And they're just, we'll hear language going on that it's going to happen, and then it just doesn't. So I strongly encourage you to please revisit it. Working with human resources, working with a group of department heads.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I would like to say, I think we should ask ourselves how many of the 92 counties are working with an outside organization to set their salaries. We have one of the very best human resources people in the community working for us now. I think she has some ability to help the auditor's office. I mean, they're financial people. Jim's a former state Board of Accounts person. I think most every county in the state of Indiana organizes their salary for people, and it's, I don't hear people complaining about their pay scales like they do here. This has gone on for years and years and years and years, and we gotta put ourselves out of the misery. It's got to stop. It's not fair. It's just not fair. And Kara, I know you can do this. I know you can.
Well, I can, and with the help of everyone else.
I know you can.
I think the issues are, and I'm not saying you should throw everything out and start from scratch. That's not what I'm saying. What I think needs to happen is that you just look at the whole thing. It's going to be a long process, but look where people are. I think jobs change. This came into effect 2013, I think, or 2015. Okay, and things change. I mean, people, like, the one person might have been a job, and that was the same thing that happened with Tammy that we talked about before. Somebody else was in that job, she only did this much, but when Tammy came in, raised the bar and did more, and they gave her more responsibility
Right.
and stuff. So things have to change, and somewhere along the line, you need to reassess where people are. Just do a reassessment of, are people really where they belong in the structure? Not that it has to go away, but just knowing if they belong, if they're in the right place. And listen, I did talk a while about this, and so you look at everybody in one category. Everybody's in a category. Should they? And maybe would help structure, knowing there may be other people who are supervising people out of that. That, I think it's a whole thing that needs to be looked at. It's not something that can be done overnight. It's gonna take a lot of time. But I think when we find the problems, that's how we have to start fixing issues and, eventually follow.
We were put into categories based on our job titles versus the responsibilities.
And every office in this building is different, and, we can do
People are
this.
never always happy. I mean, you're never gonna get everybody.
Now,
I can
Kara,
tell you-
they will. They'll be happy.
Over in our shop, every time that legislature meets, the job duties change.
That's
And-
right.
And so, at this point, about everybody that's working in the auditor's office, what they're doing now bears very little relation to what was in that 2014 or 15 job description. It
I think that's just a
changes.
lot of them, and that's what I mean, we just have to take time to do them, second time, it's work.
And one of the things we provided Kara with was WIS did Monroe County's classifications, and just how many more categories there were in each of the sections, including PAT.
They don't have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah,
Wow.
we just have
They
two.
didn't A, they did 1, 2, they had, so, I mean, they're, the possibility, they, they have.
Well, I think you can work it out. I know you can. It'll work.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Wilson.
I would like to move that we table this issue until next month and
Work on the
get the
meantime.
information that the commissioners provided or promised to us last week from WIS so that we
With the
can.
sunshine, right? That's correct.
I think the following, on the 8th.
That's
Yeah, I think the 8th.
Well, I would move that we table it until such time that we get the information that the commissioners can get us from WIS and look at all of it with the understanding that we have a possibility of back pay for.
Could we consider having Kara work with WIS on adding extra extra?
Well, when I talk to them, I'll see what their thoughts are about that. I can't imagine they're not gonna, that's, just what for, oh, and they're, so, we're talking.
So, is the motion on the floor to table the salary ordinance 2021-13, ROC 2021-26, and then along with that, additional appropriation ordinance 2021-17, ROC 2021-26, table both?
That's it.
All right, both together? So motion on the floor to table by Councilwoman Wilson, second by Councilman Thompson. Any questions or comments from council? Appears there are none. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Ms. Thies?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Ms. Wigger?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on. Public safety lit, options for distribution to units for distribution in 2022. Discussed this last week. It is on page 27 in your booklet. We just need to approve the distribution amounts. As I stated last week, what we have been doing as a county and has been satisfactory to the fire departments, fire districts, is the 65-35 split, 65% run ratio versus 35% levy ratio. I entertain a motion at this time. And again, just another thing, just for clarification too, the units must submit a letter to us by July 1st of this year for the use of these funds. Once we approve whatever schedule we're looking at, or whatever distribution we're looking at, and then we had to approve it by September 1st this year.
Mr. President,
Councilman Morris.
make a motion to approve the 65R/35L distribution
Okay.
for the lit options to distribute.
Motion on the floor by Councilman Morris,
Second.
second by Councilwoman Wilson. Any questions or comments from council? Appears there are none. I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Ms. Thies?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Ms. Waker?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. Next, honorary resolutions, there are none. Resolutions relating to fiscal policies of the council, there are none. Appointments, there are none. Next up,
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
motion to adjourn by Councilman Thompson, second by Councilwoman Wilson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
For the meeting.
Yes.